Aloha and welcome to this lesson. We're going to be talking about reasons for defining functions. It's a relatively short uh, section. We've talked about a lot of things before as to why we need functions, why we use functions. We've talked about things like readability, just having functionality isolated in certain areas. It makes your code a lot more readable. It also lets you isolate where problems are. It makes it easier for you to make changes. Let's say you had a function defined, and instead of using just a function to, or let's say you were doing something like converting Celsius to Fahrenheit, and let's say that instead of actually making a function for it, you went ahead and just called on that. You just typed in the actual formula for it in each of the places. Well, if you do that, then you're going to have to make those changes in multiple places. So it does, not only does it help your readability, but it also helps your modifiability, your ability to make changes in the future. You can isolate the number of places you need to make those changes. In the section here, they talk about improved program readability. You take a lot of code and you turn it into a smaller amount. So in doing that, you're going to make it a bit more easy to read. We also talk about modular development. You're developing in little modules and little pieces of code. And if you make it piece by piece, you can take those pieces independently and develop them independently and test them independently and then integrate them later. And it also talks about something that's very important, and you're going to hear this in other places, and they don't call it this in our book, but it's called the DRY concept, D-R-Y. And DRY stands for do not repeat. So you do not repeat yourself. In other words, you don't want to be doing the same thing in multiple places. So what you do is you take whatever functionality that you see that you're using in different places, and if you have to abstract out some of it into parameters, you do that and you make a function out of it instead of calling multiple similar sets of code in different places. So that's called the DRY principle, the do not repeat yourself principle. So in general, I think they talked about guidelines for using functions. When you're using functions and you're reading your main loop of code, you're going to be, or your main code area, it should be very readable using the function names. And in general, your functions should be around 30 lines or less. And that's just a general statement. It's not a rule, it's not a law or anything else. If it takes 50 lines of code, by all means, take 50 lines of code. But in general, you want to keep them, in around the 30 lines of code range. But never really let that affect you getting done what you need to, get done. If you find that you're going over 30 lines of code, you can also take a look and see, is there anything in there that I can abstract out? Is there anything that I can break into other functions that make sense and they could be reusable in other places? So keep that in mind. And with that, that's the end of our lesson. Stay tuned for the next one.